Hello again, I am Blunty, and this is a kind of supplemental or an update to my yesterday's commentary video thingy about Sony's E3 press conference, which was, of course, all about the PlayStation 4. Well, yes, they did talk about the PlayStation 3, but, who cares? That's old news now, and they did talk about the Vita, and well, good luck to them on that. But the reason behind this video is several-fold, actually. For one thing, a lot of people who commented on the previous video pointed out a couple of mistakes I made, which was not entirely my own fault. I was kind of misled a bit, but we'll get to that. And a few more details have leaked out about certain other things. Well, not leaked out, but come out in interviews and stuff like that about stuff that really should be talked about. And additionally, there was some stuff I didn't talk about at all that was actually in the press conference keynote thingy that they talked about, but that I didn't specifically talk about in the video, and people were asking me my opinion on that stuff. So let's talk about that stuff. First up, and most importantly, I think we should talk about DRM and second-hand games and that kind of thing. Now, Sony did make a big point about how easy it was, and that they had no restrictions on used game sales and trade-ins and all that sort of stuff, and absolutely we're not going to interfere with it in any way, shape or form. But that's not entirely the whole story. You see, the PlayStation 3 does support sort of the DRM kind of stuff, but they're leaving it up to the publishers, exactly like Microsoft are. Microsoft have sort of even more severe things in place that could potentially be used by publishers to hack off the knees of the used game market, and Sony don't have the same type of things, but they are saying if publishers want to hamstring the second-hand games market, we're not going to stop them. There's nothing in the system either way. So while all PlayStation's first-party titles will have none of that kind of stuff on, the PlayStation 4 isn't necessarily the golden playground of second-hand used games and things like that they kind of wanted to give the impression of it being. There is still no daily dial home internet connection thing required. You can have your PlayStation 4 offline for the entirety of its life, and it won't affect your ability to play games at all in any way, shape or form. So that is still leaps and bounds above or more friendly than what Microsoft are asking of us. I still maintain that even though Microsoft's sort of semi-draconian thing, if you have to connect once every 24 hours, I still maintain that's not going to be a huge issue for the majority of the customer base out there, because they'll have an internet connection available to them anyway. There are certain people who the Xbox One just won't be suitable for because of that, but I reckon Microsoft will have done the math on how many customers that will affect versus how many Xbox 360s are sold and how many people are online constantly with those. They've done the calculations about how it's going to affect their market. I think they did the wrong thing. Let me make this clear. I don't like what they did, but I don't think it's going to be a practical problem for very many people. But anyway, this is all about Sony, so let's get back to Sony. Something else that was actually mentioned in the keynote, but I didn't mention it, and I barely noticed it actually, because they were bounced across it very, very quickly. They were, oh, it does this, and then they moved on before anyone sort of paid much attention to it, I think, but obviously people noticed, and that is PlayStation Plus, the subscription service they offer, will be required if you want to play any of your games online, which brings them into line with what Microsoft have been doing for a long, long time now with Xbox Live Gold. So you have to pay a subscription to be able to play your games online. Now, the interesting thing about this is for half a decade now, a little over 7 years or whatever it's been, PlayStation fanboys have been deriding Xbox players, and fanboys indeed, because they have to pay to play online. And now Sony are doing exactly the same thing, so it will be very, very interesting to see how the PlayStation fanboys move the goalposts on that one to make an excuse for it. And I'm already seeing it already. Well, you have to pay to play online, but PlayStation Plus is better value now. But whatever. But that's something that needs to be pointed out. Can't play online unless you pay. A lot of people are going on about the price difference. Yes, PlayStation 4 is noticeably cheaper than the Xbox One, at least at launch. That thing will obviously change as the years go on and everything. But right now, at launch, the PlayStation 4 is cheaper. And I said in my original video, that's very, very aggressive of Sony. I think it's the first time they've ever been cheaper than the competition. But that's not the whole story either, because the Xbox One comes complete with the Kinect 2 hardware, the camera and everything like that. And, all discussion about how creepy that is, the camera has to be on all the time, and all that aside, that is extra hardware functionality that comes in the box. That's things you can do straight out of the box that the PlayStation 4 cannot do unless you buy an extra accessory because the PlayStation 4 does not come with the PlayStation 4 Eye. You have to buy that separately for about 50 or 60 bucks, as it turns out, which brings the prices pretty much in the same place. So it all washes out the same way when you sort of take into consideration the same, or generally the same, approximately the same hardware configurations, hardware capabilities. So make of that what you will, and make as many excuses as you want, and well, I don't want the camera or this and that, and I'm sure people will be arguing about that for 6 months, 7 months, all the way past the launch of how PlayStation 4 is cheaper, but it doesn't come with the camera. Who wants the camera anyway? And you know, we all know exactly how those arguments are going to go, but people are still going to have them anyway. But it's a cold hard fact, wherever your preference lies, that the PlayStation 4, while being cheaper, is not at hardware parity or hardware capabilities parity with the Xbox One, which comes with the Kinect system and the camera and the motion sensing abilities of that, and voice command and all that kind of stuff. So, and finally, one of the things I was wrong about, or kind of misled about from Sony's behalf, again, they weren't being entirely clear with their language, which led people like me to go off in one direction where the reality set in the other direction. It's my fault for not doing the proper research, really. I said the game Destiny was exclusive, and Sony did say that. They said, well, we've got Bungie and Activision, we've signed a long-term exclusive contract with them. They said this on stage. Those were the exact words, and I thought, well, obviously that means this game is exclusive to Sony. But it turns out it's not. It's a multi-platform game. It's even going on the existing generation as well as next generation systems. So I'm not sure exactly what that long-term exclusive contract pertains to. As map packs, I guess, I don't know. Extra functionality, skins, who knows, I don't know. At this stage, I did try and look it up, but nobody seems to be quite clear on exactly what it meant. But it does mean that all my yammering on about it being a system seller software title is complete bullshit. Because their wording on stage was obviously deliberately meant to make people like me leap to that conclusion. Foolishly leap to that conclusion. Which is embarrassing because I mocked people for leaping to conclusions based on incomplete information. One of the other things I've seen people going on about in the comments section is that during Sony's press conference, a couple of the games did have some glitches, and at one point one game froze up a bit, which seemed embarrassing, and people are claiming that's proof that the PlayStation 4 is a glitchy pile of mess, and nothing happened with Microsoft on stage demonstrations. Well, for one, you don't know what was actually being played live and which was pre-recorded and carefully edited and all that sort of stuff. And besides that, we're still 6 months out from launch. So nobody was playing on final hardware for a start. Microsoft or Sony, none of them. They're all playing on dev kits, on pre-release, development and debug gear. This is, you know, it was obvious to me at least, but people are running off in the wrong conclusions in the comment section saying, well, the PlayStation 4 is obviously full of buggy, the game's froze on stage. Well, that's what happens sometimes when you're using dev gear, and none of the games will have final code yet. Again, 6 months out from launch, they're still building these damn games, okay? They're getting close to finished, close enough to be able to show them off, but they're not, you know, gold standard yet. They're not ready to be sent to the printers yet. They've got 6 months of tinkering left to do, and they're going to use every last week of that, if they've got any sense. So it's not really a big deal that, oh, there was a glitch or a freeze on stage. Yes, it's embarrassing to have that happen and a bit distracting, but it's not an indication that the PlayStation 4 final retail hardware that you're going to have in your home will be subject to that same kind of instabilities. It's ridiculous to suggest such a thing. Just ridiculous. So anyway, with all that extra information sort of clarifying things a bit, it really hasn't changed the wind in my sails too much anyway. I still think that the PlayStation 4 will be the default console of choice for most people when it comes to multiplayer or multi-platform games and things like that. I do think that the people raging at Microsoft right now are doing so in sort of a bit of a hyperbolous manner. They're blowing things out of perspective. I mean, there are things to be angry about with the Xbox, no doubt, but you know, there's a matter of perspective here, and people are sort of just flying off in all directions with no real cognitive function about it. And you know, it's probably a good thing it's happening now. As we get closer to launch, that'll all die down, and hopefully we can all start being a little more sensible. I'm not pretending that the console wars aren't starting all over again and there's going to be a whole new fresh batch of infighting, but you know, at least we'll get past this initial foolishness. No, we won't, will we? But I do think there's been enough sort of ill will and bad press bowled up in Microsoft's direction that it will harm them from here on in, all the way through to launch. I think this stuff will stick around, like, so it will stick to their heels like stinky, shitty mud. It'll take them all the way through, and they're going to have to try very hard to sort of get past this initial sort of wall of ill will and fury, and PlayStation are going to sort of waltz right on their E3 press conference was, by all regards, a smashing success, and they got standing ovations at some points when they were talking about some stuff. And you know, Sony are going to take full advantage of this as much as they can. They're going to get their advertising teams and PR teams and community management teams all working this angle of just being sly, just undercutting Microsoft at every opportunity, just sort of sticking the boot in a little bit every time they can. And that's something Sony are particularly good at. And being on the defensive side is not something that Microsoft is particularly good at. You just have to look at their various sort of anti-Apple aimed advertising campaigns to see how sort of painfully awkward and clumsy and stupid and embarrassing those things are. You know, when they get put on the back foot by Apple having an advertising campaign aimed directly at them and they try and fight back, it's always a complete disaster. Microsoft just don't know how to fight back with any sense of self-awareness. It's embarrassing to watch, really. So that should be fun to watch as we lead up to launch as well, them trying to dig themselves out of this stinky muddy hole they've got themselves in, all the while Sony just piling up more dirt gleefully at the top, big smile on their face. And then Nintendo's off there in the distance going, I'm sure I left some games around here somewhere. Oh look, there they are in 2014. Oh, we'll get to them eventually. People won't mind, I'm sure. Oh, it hurts me to put the boot in Nintendo, really. I love Nintendo, and I think the Wii U is a great bit of gear, but oh, it's hard not to mock them these days, because they're just... What the hell am I supposed to play on that end? Anyway, this was all supposed to be at Sony, so, and Microsoft as well, I guess. But now we've covered all the bases. Anyway, thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.